The war does not announce itself with artillery. It is fought in the sterile kitchens and the cold, unlit corridors of domestic life. It is waged over lukewarm coffee and unpaid bills. You sit across from your partner, believing you are engaged in a conversation, a negotiation, perhaps even a moment of shared vulnerability. You listen to their grievances. You offer solutions. You extend your hand into the dark, expecting to find theirs. Instead, you find a steel trap. You leave the interaction drained, confused, and unaccountably angry, while they retreat with a quiet, subtle satisfaction. You have not had a conversation. You have just been processed through a machine. You have been an unwitting participant in a psychological game. Eric Berne was not a romantic. He was a forensic accountant of the human soul. In his clinical dissection of human behavior, transactional analysis, he stripped away the poetry of relationships and exposed the bleak mechanical reality beneath. People do not communicate, they transact. And when the stated goal of a transaction masks a darker, hidden motive, a game is initiated. These games are not played for amusement, they are played for survival. They are desperate, subconscious maneuvers designed to extract emotional currency, what Berne called strokes, to validate a broken worldview and to avoid the terrifying abyss of genuine intimacy. To remain blind to these games is to volunteer as prey.
Before you can dismantle the game, you must identify the players. You believe you are speaking to an adult. You are usually wrong. Berne identified 3 ego states that command the human psyche: the parent, the adult, and the child. The parent is the tape recorder of inherited dogma. It is the voice of authority, judgment, and stifling protection. It speaks in absolutes: always, never, should, must. The child is the reservoir of raw emotion. It is the impulsive, the terrified, the rebellious, and the profoundly manipulative infant that learned how to cry to manipulate the giant. The adult is the only state grounded in objective reality. It is the clinical observer, the processor of data, the entity devoid of historical bias. When your partner initiates a game, they never do so from the adult state. They approach you wearing the mask of the wounded child or the righteous parent. They cast out a line, baited with a specific emotional hook, designed to drag you out of your adult state and force you into a complementary role. If they play the helpless child, they demand you become the rescuing parent. If they play the critical parent, they demand you become the defensive child. The moment you accept the role, the trap snaps shut. The transaction is complete. You are no longer an individual. You are a puppet animating their script.
This is the most pervasive game in the psychological ecosystem. It is the apex predator of relationships, designed to bleed the savior dry. It begins with the illusion of vulnerability. Your partner presents a problem. They describe their suffering with feverish intensity, painting a picture of an inescapable dilemma. The bait is cast. You, driven by the evolutionary shortcut that equates love with problem solving, step into the role of the rescuer. You analyze the data. You offer a logical solution. Why don't you try doing this? Yes, they reply, their voice dripping with practiced melancholy. But that won't work because... You pivot. You offer a second solution, a better one. Yes, but... They counter, effortlessly neutralizing your logic with a highly specific, unsolvable constraint. The rhythm accelerates. You throw blueprints into the chasm. They burn them before they hit the bottom. You become increasingly frantic, hemorrhaging energy, desperate to prove your intellect and fix the unfixable. They sit back, perfectly calm, systematically dismantling every piece of advice you offer. Eventually, you run out of solutions. You are exhausted, frustrated, and silent. This is the moment of the switch. The game is complete. Your partner did not want a solution. A solution would require action. A solution would demand change. A solution would expose them to the terrifying friction of reality. What they wanted was the payoff. By defeating your every attempt to help, they have extracted the emotional energy of your attention. More importantly, they have validated their core, broken belief. No one can help me. My suffering is unique. I am alone. They walk away victorious. You are left staring at the wreckage of your own good intentions. He who plays the savior will soon be crucified by the one he intended to save.
This game is the architecture of the domestic prison. It is played by the partner who is deeply, unspeakably terrified of their own potential and uses your existence as the alibi for their mediocrity. The setup is a continuous, low-level hum of resentment. Your partner claims that your demands, your flaws, or your mere presence prevent them from achieving greatness. If it weren't for your schedule, I would write that book. If it weren't for your anxiety, we would travel. If it weren't for you, I would be entirely different. You absorb this blame. You shrink yourself to accommodate their imagined expansion. You attempt to be less, to need less, to provide them the frictionless environment they claim to require. Do not be deceived. They are not chained by you. You are the safety blanket they wrap around their own cowardice. If you were to suddenly vanish, if you were to grant them the absolute freedom they claim to crave, they would be paralyzed by the void. They choose restrictive, demanding partners precisely because they provide them with a permanent, ironclad excuse for their own failure to launch. The payoff is the abdication of responsibility. As long as they can point the finger at your limitations, they never have to face their own. By accepting the role of the restrictor, you are volunteering to carry the crushing weight of their unlived life. You become the warden in a prison they built, locked from the inside, so they never have to brave the wilderness beyond the gates.
This is the game of the clinical sadist masked as the aggrieved victim. It is a slow, methodical accumulation of debt, waiting for the moment of execution. The setup requires patience. Your partner watches you navigate the relationship. They observe your inevitable human mistakes. You forget a minor date. You make a careless remark. You fail to anticipate a need. A normal transaction would involve immediate, proportional feedback. You hurt me when you said that. But the game player does not want resolution. They want ammunition. They remain silent. They take the minor infraction and file it away in the dark, psychological ledger they keep behind their eyes. They hoard your mistakes like a miser hoarding copper. They wait for the tension to build. They wait for you to feel secure. They wait for you to make one slightly larger misstep. Then they spring the trap. They do not just react to the current mistake. They open the ledger. They unleash a landslide of accumulated historical grievances. The reaction is violently disproportionate to the crime. They crush you beneath the weight of 100 unvoiced sins, paralyzing your ability to defend yourself against the current accusation. The payoff is absolute tyrannical dominance. By hoarding grievances, they manufacture a state of permanent moral superiority. You are forced into the role of the groveling penitent, endlessly attempting to balance a scale they have rigged from the start. They do not want an apology. They want a hostage.
To argue with a manipulator is to become a puppet of the manipulation. You cannot win the game by playing better. You can only win by refusing the transaction. When the bait is cast, when the mask slips and the game begins, you must not react with the defensive instinct of the child or the patronizing instinct of the parent. You must introduce the clinical, chilling sovereignty of the adult. You must become a frictionless surface. 1. Identify the bait. Watch for the shift in tone. Watch for the absolute statements. Watch for the presentation of the unsolvable problem or the sudden, unearned moral high ground. Recognize the hook. Do not swallow it. 2. Cross the transaction. If they approach you as a weeping child seeking a rescuer, why don't you? Yes, but. Do not offer solutions. Reflect the responsibility back into the void. That sounds like an incredibly difficult situation. What are you going to do about it? You cut the wire. You refuse to animate the script. You leave them holding their own burden. Watch how quickly the melancholy rots into anger when the energy source is denied.
3. The silence of the Mortician. If they open the ledger, "Now I've got you," do not defend the historical data. Do not hemorrhage information trying to explain yourself. To speak defensively is to bleed. Look at them with the detached curiosity of a mortician examining a specimen on a steel table. You are bringing up things from 6 months ago. We can discuss the current issue, or we can end the conversation. Which do you prefer? You shift the physical laws of the engagement. The aggressor, leaning their entire weight into the push, suddenly finds nothing to push against. The kinetic energy they intended for you violently snaps back upon their own structure. They lose their balance. They reveal their true lack of footing. You are not their savior. You are not their warden. You are not their debtor. You are a sovereign entity, observing the bleak machinery of their habits from a position of absolute stillness. Let them scream into the abyss. Let them argue with the ghost of your expected reaction. Let them dismantle their own citadel simply because you refuse to attack the gates.
Do not volunteer as prey in a game you never agreed to play. Every emotional trap requires your consent to snap shut. That means you have been choosing your own exhaustion. If today's clinical dissection has shifted your field of vision, comment below and share this video with someone who is still bleeding in the dark.
Daily Motivation Library arms you with the psychological tools history's most ruthless observers used to survive, without firing a single shot. Berne, Machiavelli, Nietzsche. A new weapon drops every day. Subscribe and do not miss the next siege.